Greetings, viewers, and welcome to today's info sharing snippet. We will be covering the Sage 200 Evolution Annuity Billing module. Now, the Annuity Billing module allows you to set up billing transactions at predefined intervals to charge your customers. And we'll be able to see in this presentation the setup of the configurations and the different options that you can make use of in order to run these billing configurations. Right, let's get started. So firstly, we need to go to annuity billing, and under maintenance, we've got our default settings. And under defaults, we've just got information about the prompts. So for example, you may want to appoint a specific agent who's responsible for the annuity billing configuration, ensuring that the annuity billing runs are done or run at a specified time. You can obviously specify an agent information there, and then also details about prompts. So we can have, for example, a prompt at regular intervals to inform the agent that there are certain annuity billing runs that need to be completed at a certain date and time. And just details about automatic numbering for our charge templates. So you'll see that we can impose or we can process annuity billing runs via charge template or invoice template. And you can then specify automatic numbering for those charge templates if required. So once it's been completed, we can start with our configuration setup. Firstly, we've got the option to set up your annuity billing configurations. So we're now going to go and set up our configurations, specifying the frequency or when the annuity billing run is going to occur. So I can, for example, specify details. And at this point, I can specify when the billing is going to take place. So I can say on the first of every week, month, etc., or specify a certain month. I can say, for example, every number of months, or I can say on the first of every, etc., etc. So as you can see, you can be very flexible about your configuration setup. I'm going to use on the first day of every month. And then what I can also do is I can limit the amount of occurrences. So, for example, if you maybe have some form of service or maintenance contract that runs over a certain number of months, you can say that, for example, that the occurrences would obviously be limited to the number of months that make up that particular contract. And we also then have details about the activation dates. So we can activate on the date it was created. We can activate on a specified date, and we can also specify to charge immediately on the activation date. We then also have details about the termination of that particular configuration. So as I mentioned, is that perhaps it's some form of contract which runs for a certain period of months. You can specify that after a certain month or certain number of periods that contract will then end, and then obviously specify the end date of that contract. Right, so I've got my setup there with my details, and I'm then going to complete that. I'm just at this point, I'm also just going to go add another one. And once again, at this stage, I'm just going to say, for example, the last day of every month, and everything else remain the same. And I've got my details over there. So as you can see, you can create as many configurations as required, and then also be quite flexible with regards to the charge intervals on those configurations. Right, so there we go. I've got the setup done completely. Now, as I mentioned previously, is that there's two ways in which charging can be done, either via a charge template or else via invoice template. So firstly, we're going to go to our receivables charge templates, and the description, and the transaction code is going to be invoicing, and simply a case of specifying the actual amount that's going to be charged. So I've got my details there. Is the amount inclusive or exclusive? And then details about the tax type and the settlement terms if they are applicable. So I've got my charge template. Now, just to be clear, that with a charge template, there's going to be no physical source document. It's simply going to be a charge in the customer's account, and they'll see this on their customer statement. However, there won't be a physical source document. Now, the other option that we do have is the ability to use or link annuity billing to an actual invoice template. So under my receivables transactions, at this point, I'm now going to specify the customer, and I'm going to go link the customer either to the invoice template or a charge template. So it's a case of specifying the customer, and I'm now going to link this customer to a charge template. So I've got my charge template there. There we go. And now linking this particular charge template to our annuity billing configuration. Right, so there we go. It tells me that the activation date has been specified, and I can now complete the process. So once again, linking the customer to either an invoice or a charge template, and then once again, linking that to a configuration, which is going to be how frequently the charge or the billing takes place. Right, so I'm going to add another setup, which is now going to be linked to an invoice template. So there's my customer, and in this particular instance, I'm going to link it to an invoice template. So this would be a template that you would have created in your inventory module as an invoice template with perhaps some stock items or perhaps even some GL accounts that would be applicable on the template, on the invoice template. I've then got my template information there. And once again, just link that to my configuration. Right, and I've got the activation date, etc. And that's a process completed. So really would be a case of all customers which are going to be billed via the annuity billing, you need to then go and link the customer account either to an invoice template or a charge template, and then subsequently link that to an annuity billing configuration. Right. So once it's been completed, we then go to transactions in order for us to run the charge templates or the annuity billing. Right, so under transactions, I've got receivables due. And what you see there is that those two transactions appear there for those customers, being this charge template and the invoice. However, what I could also do is under my desktop, we have a receivables annuity billing due option. So if I open up that and I'm simply going to go refresh, you'll see that I've got details there. It tells me there's the customers, there's the template information and the values, etc. So I'm just going to go, for example, process one of these annuity billing runs. So highlight the customer. I'm going to go to the process option. And there's a couple of options there. We can insert, for example, details about the project, settlement terms, the sales rep if applicable. And also we've got the option for validation. So we can obviously have some validation checks before running the process. For example, checking if the account's on hold, over terms, over credit limit, etc. And then under options, we've also got the ability to go and specify a range of customers. So perhaps I may not want to go and run all the annuity billing runs at the same time. I can simply insert a range. So I'm going to specify the customer and validations have been checked, and I'm going to say process. So it tells me that the annuity billing run has been successfully completed. It tells me the number of charge templates have been run, and if necessary, I can go and view the log file to check the details of the annuity billing run. So I can close that. And now we can then go and complete the other annuity billing run, which is going to be based on the invoice template. So once again, the same process. I'm going to go to my process, and under validation, we can obviously check a couple of options there before processing. And under options, I'm just going to specify the customer. Right, and we're good to go. So I'm going to say process that transaction. Right, it's been completed successfully. And now we can go see the results of the initial billing run on the relevant customer's account. So I'm going to go to my customers, and let's just go inquire on the customer's account. So there we have it. And I'm just going to go through to inquire. And there's my transaction. So as you can see, there's the transaction. It was the IN transaction code, and there's my details. If I just drill down into the transaction, you'll see that I've got my details about the GL postings. And what you notice is in this particular instance, the source option isn't available, simply because, as I mentioned, it was based on charge template. There's no physical source document. So therefore, you're not going to be able to have a source document if you've linked that annuity billing run to a charge template. Now, if we then go and look at the other customer, and I'm going to go view that transaction. So there we have it. There's our transaction with the reference, etc., the invoice. In this particular instance, I'm going to go drill down the transaction, and we've got our details of the GL postings, etc. And here we have the ability to go drill down into the source document. And there's my transaction with the details, etc. And then this transaction or this particular document can then be printed and emailed to the customer, etc., or sent to the customer. So just be aware that depending on if you're using an invoice template or a charge template, you are going to have a source document depending on which option you're going to be using. So really quite a simple process. It's really a case of setting up your defaults, and once you've done that, setting up your configurations, which are being the time period or the frequency of the annuity billing run, linking them, specifying either a charge template or an invoice template. And then once you've done that, linking the physical customer account to the configuration charge template, invoice template, and then simply view the transactions. When the time frame is, or the time period is ready for the transaction to be run, simply run the annuity billing transactions, and the customer accounts will then be updated. Right, so thank you so much for tuning in and watching this presentation. It's over and out for me, and goodbye.